what if the exact amount of effort you're putting in right now, to build a safe, secure life,
Right.
what if that's the exact same effort that's practically guaranteeing your ruin?
It's a pretty terrifying
It
premise.
really is. I mean, we're so culturally wired to believe ambition is just this linear path to security. Like, you study hard, you work late, you buy the house, climb the corporate ladder, and boom, society hands you a shield against the world.
Yeah, that's the promise, right? But the reality is often, well, it's quite different because we measure our worth by momentum. And the idea that this forward momentum is actively weaponizing our lives against us, that requires a total paradigm shift.
And that paradigm shift is exactly our mission today. Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we are exploring a single, just incredibly potent essay for you.
Truly fascinating piece of writing.
Yeah, it's written by Feng, dated September 6th, 2025, and it's titled, "You Are Striving to Shackle Yourself." So, okay, let's unpack this. Because the author doesn't just critique modern burnout. I mean, we've all heard that a million times, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The whole hustle culture is bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Feng completely deconstructs the actual architecture of ambition. The core argument here is that the pursuit of success isn't just tiring. It's fundamentally a mechanism of self-imprisonment.
Right. And Sufeng is basically arguing that the chains binding us, they aren't imposed by some, external malevolent force. Like society isn't chaining you.
We're doing it ourselves.
Exactly. We are meticulously forging these chains ourselves, link by link, and we're calling them milestones. We're totally confusing the accumulation of leverage with the accumulation of safety.
Wow, yeah. Confusing leverage with safety.
Mm.
Let's start by looking at how this plays out in probably the most universal aspiration out there.
Yeah.
Middle-class dream of home ownership.
The classic trap.
Right. So the essay gives this devastating mathematical breakdown of a family striving for a 5,200,000 square meter apartment. And I want to walk through this, not as a lesson in mortgages. I mean, we all know how debt works.
Yeah.
But really as a masterclass in how striving manufactures extreme fragility.
The math is honestly the starkest way to illustrate the philosophical point here. It strips away all that emotional romanticism of like, oh, buying a forever home, and just exposes the raw structural risk.
Totally. So get this. The family labors for over a decade. They sweat, they save, they just push themselves to the absolute limit to accumulate $3 million in cash.
Which is a huge achievement, right? That's their foundation.
Yeah, it's massive. And they use that $3 million as a down payment on a $5 million home. And they take out a $2 million bank loan. They've hit the milestone. They are paying $10,000 a month in principal and interest.
Sounds pretty standard so far.
Until the macroeconomic variables shift.
Mm.
The market crashes, the home's value drops to $2.5 million, and boom, unemployment hits. They literally cannot make that $10,000 monthly payment.
And here is where the architecture of their striving just collapses on them, because the bank steps in, right? They auction the property for its new market value of $2.5 million. The bank takes $1.9 million to clear the remaining loan balance, deducts a huge chunk for administrative costs, and the family, after all that, they walk away with just $400,000.
$400,000.
Yeah.
From $3 million, they traded 10 years of their life force and $3 million in liquid security for $400,000. And just a catastrophic psychological blow.
It's devastating.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me think of like a treadmill where someone else completely controls the speed. You keep running faster and faster just to stay in place. And when you finally trip, you aren't just stumbling, you're thrown off the machine entirely.
That is a great analogy. And what's fascinating here is the underlying causality of it all.
What do you mean?
Well, losing that $2.6 million, losing the whole decade of savings, none of that was even possible until they actively strive for it. Had they just stayed in a smaller rented place.
Oh, wow.
Right. Had they protected their $3 million in liquid capital instead of converting it into, highly leveraged social status, the unemployment and the market crash would have just been inconveniences, not an existential wipeout.
So the effort to secure themselves, the very act of stretching for that specific rung on the ladder, is exactly what stripped away their defenses.
Exactly. The vulnerability wasn't the market crash. The vulnerability was created the moment they decided to stretch their capacity to its breaking point.
They weaponized their own ambition against their security. That completely flips the script. But okay, if financial leverage leaves the middle class exposed, I really want to look at the other end of the spectrum.
The ones who actually win.
Right. So what does this all mean for the people who reach the absolute top?
Yeah.
Doesn't extreme wealth or power offer protection from these shackles? Like, if a 5 million apartment is a trap, surely a billion-dollar empire provides a moat, right? You've got capital, influence, lawyers.
You'd think so. You'd think you aren't just surviving the system, you are the system. But you're touching on what the essay calls the illusion of scale.
The illusion of scale.
Yeah, we assume that if a small amount of success provides a small amount of security, then extreme success must provide absolute invulnerability. But the text takes us directly into the fates of those at the absolute apex, and the reality is that scale doesn't create a moat.
It doesn't.
No, scale simply multiplies your surface area for disaster.
Wow, surface area for disaster.
Mhm.
The essay actually drives this home by listing some truly jarring outcomes for wildly successful entrepreneurs.
Well,
Right?
it does. We're talking about people who conquered their entire industries.
Yeah, like just Jianming, the head of the Sichuan Mingda Group. He amassed over 100 million in assets through this relentless, cutthroat striving. And then in 2004, at just 41 years old, he was killed in an explosion in his own office over a compensation dispute.
And he's not the only one.
Not at all. There's Cao Jinling, was the richest man in Hainan, worth billions. He took his own life at 57. And Lifechanyuan, chairman of a massive real estate group, killed in his own home at 55.
It's tragic, but you see, when you build an empire of that magnitude, you aren't just accumulating wealth, you are accumulating friction.
Section, yeah.
You're generating competitors, grievances, regulatory scrutiny, just immense internal pressure. The scaffolding required to hold up a multi-billion-dollar enterprise is unbelievably complex.
And terrifyingly fragile. It's like building a massive skyscraper directly on top of a fault line. The taller you build it, the more you strive to add another 50 floors, the more devastating the collapse is going to be when the Earth inevitably shifts.
Exactly. A one-story house might rattle in an earthquake, but the 100-story tower is coming straight down.
Right.
And Sufeng explicitly maps this identical dynamic onto the realm of political power, too. The essay points out that over the last decade, hundreds of thousands of officials have been arrested and imprisoned.
Hundreds of thousands. That's not just a few bad apples at the bottom.
No, this sweeps from the state and vice-state ranks, central military commission levels, all the way down to county and section chiefs.
Which raises such a critical point about hierarchical power. The source material highlights that nearly every single one of those officials didn't just stumble into power, they fought tooth and nail for it.
Oh, absolutely. They maneuvered, they formed alliances, they compromised, they put in gargantuan amounts of effort to climb that ladder.
Because they believed, just like the homeowner, that reaching the next tier would finally provide safety.
But political power is the ultimate leveraged asset. To rise, you have to make promises, you operate in incredibly gray areas. By the time you reach the top, the sheer number of variables that can trigger your downfall is just staggering.
So their ceaseless striving didn't protect them at all. It actively positioned them directly in the crosshairs.
Precisely. The higher they climbed, the further they fell into the prison cell. They built their own cages.
Okay, I think most people can conceptualize that. I mean, we inherently know that extreme corporate wealth and high-stakes politics are basically blood sports.
Right, it's messy. People know the risks.
Exactly. But I want to push back on this universal theory of striving for a second. Because what about just striving for knowledge, like intellectual achievement?
Academia.
Yeah, it's easy to see how money and political ambition get dangerous, but isn't academic excellence supposed to be the ultimate safe path? It's universally celebrated as noble. It's just you, your mind, and a library.
Well, that is the tragedy of intellect that Sue Feng addresses, and honestly, it is arguably the most sobering part of the entire essay.
It really is dark.
We desperately want to believe that intellectual leverage is immune to this self-shackling dynamic, but the reality of modern academia proves otherwise.
Yeah, the essay carefully lists the names of several brilliant, gifted scholars to make this point, and I think it's important we mention them. People like Yang Bao, Lin Ruosu, Hu Jingjing.
Zheng Dongwen, Yang Zigao.
Right, and Tao Chengyan, Teng Xiaolin, Chen Weixiang, Gei Weiwei, and the common thread here is just devastating.
It breaks your heart. Each of these individuals represented the absolute pinnacle of intellectual potential. They were young, extraordinarily gifted, and they pushed themselves to the absolute limits of human comprehension.
And yet, every single one of these brilliant minds highlighted in this section took their own life.
Which is just, yeah. This raises an important question, right? How does intellectual struggle, a pursuit entirely devoid of corporate greed or political malice, morph into a psychological prison?
It has to be like identity fusion.
Well, it's more about that.
Well, if financial leverage is borrowing money you can't afford, maybe intellectual leverage is attacking your entire sense of self-worth to an impossibly high standard of academic perfection.
You've hit the nail on the head. When your entire identity is forged in that crucible of intellectual superiority, the fear of failure ceases to be about, say, a bad grade or a rejected peer review.
It becomes a threat of total self-annihilation.
Exactly. The modern academic system demands a hyper-specialization that is just profoundly unnatural. You're forced to narrow your focus to such a microscopic degree, and the competition is so fierce that the mind turns into a high-pressure environment with zero release valve.
It's like an evolutionary dead end. You become so perfectly adapted to this one, highly specific, incredibly demanding academic niche that if the wind blows the wrong way, a difficult advisor, a failed experiment, you have no other foundation to stand on.
None at all.
So the intellect, which is supposed to be this ultimate tool for liberation, becomes the exact heavy chain that pulls them under.
They are striving so intensely to master their disciplines that they lose all connection to the broader, grounding reality of simply being alive. The PhD, the published papers, they become heavier and more restrictive than any iron shackle.
It's a haunting realization. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly deeply relevant for you listening right now.
Yeah.
Because you might be analyzing this and thinking, well, look, I'm not mortgaging my life for a $5 million apartment. I'm not a billionaire CEO or a corrupt politician, and I'm definitely not a PhD student on the brink of a breakdown. So I'm successfully avoiding the trap.
But Swifting makes it very clear that the bankrupt homemongers, the imprisoned officials, the tragic academic suicides, they are merely the visible extremes.
Right, the spectacular anomalies that actually make the evening news.
Exactly. Beneath them is a massive, silent iceberg that directly affects practically everyone, making up the vast majority of society.
The essay describes this vast population caught in a cycle of just chronic worry, pain, fear, depression, illness, tension, operating constantly on the brink of collapse.
It's not the dramatic explosion of a billionaire's empire. It's the slow, agonizing erosion of millions of everyday lives.
I always think about modern life like carrying a backpack. Society just keeps throwing in heavy rocks, right? Expectations, promotions, side hustles, and we are literally conditioned to feel grateful for the opportunity to carry the extra weight.
We wear our exhaustion as a badge of honor. It's this pathology of glorifying the struggle. We're socially conditioned to operate at a massive deficit and call it a strong work ethic.
It's like putting your car in neutral, flooring the gas pedal until the engine is screaming and the needle is buried in the red, and then sitting there thinking, wow, look how much energy I'm producing. But you aren't going anywhere. You're just burning out the engine and calling it progress.
That's a brilliant way to frame it. And this is where the essay really pivots from critique to deep philosophical interrogation. Zhu forces us to stop redlining the engine long enough to ask some basic things. Why do we live? What is our actual purpose?
Right. We toil and claw to make something of ourselves. We gamble our peace of mind for a little more profit. But can the aim truly be reached?
And even if you manage to grab it, even if you get the title, the money, the recognition, can it be kept? As we just saw with all those extreme examples, the answer is almost always no.
Because the variables are totally outside your control. So if relentless striving is essentially an act of self-harm, what's the alternative? Does you think just want us to embrace apathy, like lie down and wait for the end?
No, not at all. The alternative isn't apathy. It isn't giving up. The essay proposes a profound pivot toward what the author calls the way of the greatest creator, or the way of nature, the Tao.
The Tao.
Right. This is not about inaction. It is about the source and direction of your action.
But how does that actually translate into the friction of daily life? What does it mean to walk the way of nature when you still have a mortgage to pay and a boss breathing down your neck?
It demands a principle of alignment before action. The text argues that before you grit your teeth, dig in your heels, and decide to just work harder, you have to audit your worldview.
Audit it how?
You have to ensure that your view of value, your view of human life, and your relationship with the universe itself actually align with what Zhu calls the heart's rightness, reason, universal law, and your innate nature.
So instead of just assuming that the societal script, more money, higher status, better grades, is the correct path, you actually have to pause. You have to ask if that path is compatible with your fundamental psychological and spiritual makeup.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author uses a deeply resonant phrase for what happens when we ignore this alignment.
Oh, I know the one.
Yeah, Shuofeng calls it a blind collision.
Blind collision. It's
Mm.
incredible phrasing. It implies that without natural alignment, you aren't actually navigating the world. You're just violently throwing yourself against the unyielding physical laws of your own psychology.
Think about the physical world. If you try to force a river to flow up a mountain, you can expend an infinite amount of energy, right? You can build massive pumps, construct huge concrete channels. You might even achieve it temporarily.
But you're in a state of constant warfare against gravity.
Exactly. The moment your effort falters, gravity wins, and the water crashes back down. Society encourages us to push rivers up mountains and calls it ambition. But the way of nature says, find the natural gradient of the landscape and let the water carve its own powerful, effortless path.
And the text doesn't shy away from the consequences of that blind collision either. The imagery Suifeng uses is just visceral.
It is.
If you insist on forcing things, striving for an unnatural outcome dictated by external pressure rather than internal truth, the end result is a battered self, a broken head, fractured bones, torn sinews.
It's a violent, physical tearing apart of your life because the friction of that misalignment is completely unsustainable. The universe always wins the fight against unnatural striving.
Right.
The chronic illnesses, the sudden collapses, the profound depressions, they aren't just medical anomalies. According to the essay, they are the exact predictable outcomes of living in a state of blind collision.
It completely reframes how we should view our daily exhaustion, doesn't it?
Right.
Like if you are constantly exhausted, anxious, operating on the brink, it might not be because you aren't strong enough.
Or not working hard enough.
Right. It might be because you are fundamentally misaligned. You are a fish striving with every ounce of your being to climb a tree, and you're wondering why you feel like you are dying.
And that realization is the key to dropping the shackles. True progress isn't about increasing the intensity of your struggle. It's about shifting the direction of your energy towards something that doesn't require you to constantly redline your soul.
Man, what a shift in perspective. So what does this all mean for us as we try to navigate the rest of our week? Just to summarize the journey we've taken today, we've examined how the everyday pursuit of financial leverage-like stretching for that massive home caler transforms liquid security into extreme structural fragility.
Right. It creates the vulnerability.
And we've looked at how the elite pursuit of wealth and political dominance doesn't build a fortress at all, but instead multiplies your surface area for disaster, like building a skyscraper on a fault line.
We've also deconstructed the tragedy of intellectual leverage, seeing how hyperspecialization and attaching your entire identity to academic perfection turns a brilliant mind into a psychological pressure cooker.
And perhaps most importantly, we've unmasked the hidden majority, the millions of everyday people quietly vibrating with anxiety, engaging in a blind collision with the universe by forcing their lives into unnatural molds.
Every single one of these pursuits, when driven by relentless, unaligned striving, becomes the very iron that forms our chains. It's a heavy realization. But the diagnosis is exactly what makes the cure possible.
Seeing the architecture of the trap is the only way to stop building it.
Precisely.
Absolutely. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering question that Zhu poses in the essay. It is a direct challenge to your current momentum, the author asks. Right now, are you fastening shackles on yourself, or you're setting yourself free?
And if I can offer one final provocation to build on that, something to truly wrestle with on your own after this deep dive ends,
Please do.
consider this. If you were to magically successfully strip away every single one of those external shackles of striving tomorrow morning, the prestigious job title, the impressive mortgage, the academic degrees, the relentless pursuit of the next milestone, would you finally find a profound innate freedom underneath it all? Or would you uncover a terrifying existential void where your identity used to be?
Oof. Are we striving because we want the prize, or are we striving because we are terrified of who we are without the struggle? That is a profound question to sit with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Suifeng's work. Take a breath, stop pushing the river up the mountain for a minute, and we'll see you next time.